Hi, everybody. This is today's lesson, and this is a beautiful day to learn. Today with us, this is Kader. He has over 20 years of experience as a managing director of a consulting company. I believe he's a great teacher and he has so much experience. So I'm so happy to have him here. Yeah, if you want to talk a bit about your background, and then we go through some of the lessons in different areas. So thanks.
Certainly. Thank you, Sergio. And it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me. Well, my name is Kader, and I started off in business in 1998. My original background was in biotechnology, but in 1998, I changed direction and I started to take an interest in business. And by 2000, I had started a very small boutique management consulting firm in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And over the last 25 odd years, 24 years, I've had the pleasure of working with thousands of different companies, small and medium, as well as probably a couple of hundred large companies. So yes, that's me.
So thank you very much for that, Mo. Wow, so you went from studying sciences, biotechnology. How was that change? For example, so many of us we studied a career in one industry or area. How is that to switch from, I don't know, let's say biotechnology to now business? Yeah.
It's a great question, Sergio. Well, ironically, I learned the lesson too late. So when I'm asked now, I have the wisdom of of dishing out the lesson. But when I changed over from science to business, it was really that I was no longer interested in science, rather than that I was interested in business. And I saw an opportunity to perhaps take the rigor of scientific research and try and apply it to business research, which led to the first assignment, if you will, in the consulting business to find out information about competitive behavior and competing products and services. So it was an odd transition. Now, of course, after 25 years, I act as if I knew the lesson. So I say to people, you should really pursue what you ultimately enjoy doing. I did it in reverse, but here we are today.
All right, that's great. Well, I can totally relate to that. I studied industrial engineering, and then I have been studying more courses related to business. But yeah, I think I haven't figured it out, but I believe I'm on the way. So what's a consulting company?
It's called Consultica Worldwide Management Consultants. It's quite a long name. Yeah. And there is a story behind the name, that after about 3 years of doing consulting in Sydney, we received one of the contacts in Sydney moved to Vietnam, and he then wanted us to help him with some corporate training in Vietnam, and then that expanded to Singapore. And so it became more realistic to call the company worldwide, even though, of course, it's not. It's a very small organization, but that's where the word worldwide comes from.
Well, it sounds nice.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I was just thinking that there is a sentence. Sorry, I thought about it while listening to you, and it just disappeared. Well, I got another one that came to my mind. Another quote.
Yes, yes.
It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go, if you want to stay long in the game, go together with more people.
That's wonderful. I agree entirely with that. So true.
Sorry, I forgot the other one. Okay, so that's a consulting company. Yeah, let's say, well, you have been in businesses for over 20 years. That's already a big accomplishment. So what would you say, how has it changed the industry? Let's say you have been through the I don't know, 2008 crisis, I don't know, during the COVID pandemic. has it impacted, or what will you say from the business owner point of view?
Yes. 2008 did not affect our business, and it didn't affect our customers, to be honest, despite most of the customers being in the middle, which is the medium-sized firm. In 2008, most of them were not affected. During COVID 2020, we were affected very much so. In fact, I closed down two companies. So the Consultica is one of three firms I've established, but two of them had to close down. And around a third of our customers, their industries changed so dramatically that they had to downsize completely to, change shape from a medium to a micro business. So this latest external factor had an impact, but not 2008. Notwithstanding that, people bounce back, and as I'm sure you are aware, you're a very resilient and hardworking person yourself. Resilience is a human characteristic, and entrepreneurs and business people have a slightly higher dose of resilience than sort of the average person. So a lot of people just bounce back.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine. What would you say are some of those things that are the hardest ones from the business owner perspective that maybe other people perhaps they don't notice, but you only know until maybe you are in that experiencing it?
It's a really good question. To be honest, it's human relationships. So to give you an example, if you raise a pet, I don't know, a little kitten that you find, and you look after the kitten, and she becomes a cat, and then the cat grows, and the cat has baby cats, and there's a bond between you and that pet, and that bond, they will never forget it, and you will never forget it. What I found in business is that from an employer-employee relationship point of view, particularly in the consulting space, people you might perhaps hire and train and sort of almost mentor and take on board. After 3 or 4 years, they seem to sort of all want to go and start their own business, competing with the original employer. And it's a trend in consulting that has been consistent over the last 20 years. On the one hand, it's good because you want that entrepreneurial spirit. On the other hand, it's bad because a lot of them end up failing because they think it's just about getting, the first new customer, or taking a customer from the consultancy. But they find that it's a lot more than that. So back to your question, that detachment of human relationship is, in my view, the hardest, because you see people as they progress and they grow in front of you and they develop. And at the point where they're supposed to give back the best of what they have, they leave and compete. And some of them come back and say, look, I'm sorry, this didn't work out the way I wanted. But that trust bond is sort of, it's hard to replace. That's the most difficult part. And the other is also a human relationship, which is with customers, where, of course, every business has to look after its interests, but you could have a customer for 20 years. And then if their interests don't align to yours, it's all over. So they're the two hardest things, I guess.
Thanks for that beautiful description. Yeah, in fact, I have heard, in books and others, usually say that relationships and that's part of the most complicated thing from a managerial point. So you also mentioned things about coaching, training people. I feel like that might be one other of your passions, or certainly I believe you are skilled at it.
Yes, it is. It's important, Sergio, and it's also it's a skill that some managers today don't seem to want to develop because everybody's so busy. But in my view, I go back to something that you said earlier: if you want to go fast, go alone. But with people around you, you need to go slow, right, and gentle. And coaching, training, mentoring, teaching. When I was sort of growing up in business, if you will, was very commonplace. It was expected that a manager would teach you. And in today's business environment, that's less so the case. And managers have maybe more expectations that you will do stuff and bring expertise directly to the company from day one. I am an old-fashioned guy, so I certainly, for all of our colleagues, I certainly train and teach, and to the extent where they can actually leave and start their own competing company. So you can see how much training takes place.
That sounds like a great teamwork. And oh yeah, let's talk about the culture in a company. That's certainly
Yes.
good point.
Well, culture is the best way to sort of look at it is it's the thing that gets left over after you've lost all of your products, all of your customers. There's nothing left. You've got culture, and so many companies have bounced back to life from what was seemingly the end of the firm because of their culture. So, to you put it mildly, it's really just about the relationships that people have with one another in the company and how they perceive themselves in relation to the company. So if there's a sense of ownership and belonging and sort of almost family-like, membership, then you've achieved a fantastic outcome. And culture has saved, certainly for our clients, I would say 40% of our clients have been saved by culture or changes in culture.
Great. What will be one of those projects or that most companies have in mind, let's say in the last years, or let's say a trend probably? What will you?
In the last year, the trend has been in two different areas. The first is in strategy. So a lot of companies had strategies that COVID simply demolished, right? And so they stopped even trying to implement their strategic plans. As you know, Sergio, strategic plans tend to, if we talk about pre-COVID, tended to span, like a 5 to 8 year, perhaps 10-year period at most. But certainly no strategic plan is less than 4 or 5 years. So companies had already had in place plans. And when COVID came, it either came at the tail end of those plans where they were about to finish and hopefully get to their goal, and COVID just pushed that back, or they had just begun their plans and COVID disrupted the plan and just said, sorry, you can't continue. The net result of that is after the 2.5 years of not doing much, the trend today is a lot of companies are going back to strategic planning and they're recasting their plans, they're rewriting new plans, they're really focused on strategy and strategic foresight, which they were less focused on pre-COVID. I won't say less focused on, but there wasn't such a volume of strategic planning taking place because you had all those different cycles. But now everybody's so that's COVID, and everybody's been kept behind the door, for strategy. And now that the door is open, everybody's running out, developing strategies. And the second trend that we see is that employers are now really, really focused on talent acquisition, because it's the first time in the history of most companies that they've really felt, oh, actually, there is such a thing as talent management and talent acquisition. There is talent, and to get it is actually like buying a property. It's like investing in something. And they're starting to see that now. And so that's another trend.
How do you get talented people? Talent.
Well, there's an honest answer and an academic answer. Which one would you like?
Both.
All right. The academic answer is you create a positive culture in the organization to attract the right candidate. Now, the honest answer, you pay them 30 to 40% higher than the market rates. And that's what most people are doing. But what they're finding is, they're spending a lot of time hiring that first talented person. And when they find them, they just say, look, what are you on now? 70,000? I'll give you 110 tomorrow. You need a month? Take 2 months. If you want to work from home, 3 days a week, work from home 4. Just show me that you can do it. And so people are joining, they're proving themselves in the first 3 or 4 months, and they're seeing that the company is genuine. They are getting the salary, they are getting the flexibility. So the next step that HR managers are doing is to say, all right, so now the talented Sergio, you believe that what I said to you was true? And you say, yes, you fulfilled all your promises. So now I say, Sergio, can you find me one more talented person in your circle? But just before you go looking, the key word is talented. And so that's how they're doing it. They're using referral systems. So when the person goes to their friend, they have firsthand experience. They won't say something like, or a friend or a colleague or graduate, someone they know. They won't say, look, I heard this company is good. They say, I've been working for this company for 4 months and they're great. And that's a shift in how things are done in talent management from pre-COVID.
All right, interesting. So it's a good time for well, to develop our skills and become more talented.
Yes, absolutely. For
Nice.
sure.
Well, changing the topic a little bit more. Um, I know you studied in I think it was in Germany, and you have been in different areas of the world, if we can say it that way. What will be one of those lessons that you have learned, let's say, from different cultures or the studies that you have done? Yeah, thinking on that area.
Hmm. A couple of things. Perhaps firstly, non-verbal communication. So body language can overcome lots of barriers. For example, something as simple as just smiling at someone. Even when you don't know and it's a difficult situation, smiling at a person is enough to activate a lot of people's the barriers start coming down. And even in situations of difficult negotiation of contracts or disagreements over commercial issues, having that sense of humor and just perhaps positive body language, smiling, taking things a little bit lightheartedly because it's not the end of the world, that tends to help in almost every place I've been in. And the second thing is when not knowing what to do, not to try, but just to not do anything. So, for example, if I don't know what to say, most people think I have to utter something. I have to say, but actually remaining silent and saying nothing at all, in many cases where we don't understand the culture, is the most respectful thing to do. And it's often received more positively than an attempt to sort of do something out of desire to appear as doing something. So silence when silence is required, and being optimistic, smiling, and being lighthearted in negotiations where possible.
I like it. What would you recommend for someone who wants to get new clients or customers for whatever their business might be? It can be from how to get that first meeting with the potential customers to what to do during the meeting.
Yes, assuming it's a business to business type of a relationship, so rather than B2C, essentially just getting a meeting. A lot of times when people meet, other further barriers come down. People can see the body language of the other person, as I was referring to earlier, but a lot of people, particularly in Australia, Australia is a very down-to-earth sort of a place. And so Australian businesses, they prefer to sort of see the person that they're communicating with and almost test them out through their body language and their honesty and their ability to communicate. So being able to get the first customer is often tied up with being able to get a meeting. And I often say to people going to an interview, for example, don't think about getting the job. Just don't worry about that. Just get the interview. And your whole focus should be not on the job, but just on the interview. And then they excel in that. My proposal, suggestion to, an entrepreneur or a salesperson is to just get the meeting. And to do that again, I go back, I'm a little bit old fashioned, but I find in my business, for example, 8 out of 10 customers don't come from social media or, someone's seeing an ad somewhere or they find the website and call us. It comes from, if I forget about the referrals, it comes from old fashioned identifying a business, reading about it in the news and then just calling them and the receptionist hanging up and then calling them again a week later and the receptionist hanging up again. And then until you get enough, oomph to be able to see someone or talk to someone. And that's usually the beginning. Most of our customers who are businesses who provide services, like, for example, we've got customers who provide cleaning services. So they clean other offices and businesses. 9.5%, 9.5 out of every 10 customers are through cold calling. If we look at our insurance customers, even accountants, it comes from doing something active rather than just sort of passive like a social media page.
All right, so it still works.
Yes,
Even
yes.
though we
Perhaps not in all businesses, but for example, if I run a mechanical workshop, an advertisement is my biggest thing, not a phone call. But insurance, professional services, accounting, even legal, they tend to mingle and they go to conferences and exhibitions. It's very much an active strategy as opposed to a passive one using digital marketing only.
Great. Um, I think you have been in working as well as a teacher, mentor, trainer along well for certain time. What would you say for or what do you see in the new generations to say in some way? What would you recommend? What yeah yeah it's general views on the new generations that are coming and
I
trying to
think
learn business.
the new generations with an S, let's say anyone born, I don't know, from 1990 onwards, um, is firstly, I think there's an underestimation of the amount of ethics that exists in younger generations. To be frank, I find a younger generation of business people, entrepreneurs, in the working sense and in the social sense, much more ethical than, say, sort of a previous generation. And by ethical, I don't mean that they, it's not about the work ethic only. It's really social ethics and wanting to do the right thing and not wanting to, cut corners that they know will hurt the customer. So I found that quite surprising. And of course, the other characteristic is there's a heightened sense of adventure in the younger generation. So, and it's not to do with age; it has to do with commercial adventure. So, thinking out of the box is a characteristic of that younger generation. And so they will look at things that perhaps a previous generation would think, well, that's just ridiculous. But they come up with these really great ideas. And it's, as I said, it's not a function of age, but a function of the way of thinking. So they're two things that I notice.
Interesting. What will be one, let's say, a recommendation that you will give based on your observations and yeah, what would you
I think
recommend us?
it's a boring recommendation because I sort of alluded to it before, and it almost sounds like a cliche. It's almost overdone, Sergio, but it's so true. And I've seen it myself in my own work, and I've seen it with dozens of other people. And the recommendation is don't worry about what people think you should be doing as a job. Keep trying until you find a job where you're not bad at it, right? Because you'll do lots of jobs where you're actually bad at it or below average. The first discovery in one's career is to discover the type of job where they are at the average. And that's a big discovery when they find that. And to stay in that job for a couple of years, maybe, and then find the one aspect of either that job or another completely different role where you're above average. If you can find that space where you're above average, you're going to become successful. Near my office, the office is in the CBD in Sydney. And 9 times out of 10, I walk to meetings because they're all in the CBD. I would say there are probably 10 regular homeless people in the 12 kilometers of space that I tend to move in. And of them, one of them is super successful. I make I purposely, when they say, do you have some money or can I get $10? I might not always be able to give them something, but I always stop and I talk and I say something like, I'm sorry, I can't give you $10 because I can't spare $10 at the moment, or I don't have change or whatever, but they value that. One of them is really good. So he's on the corner of two particular streets, and he is, in my view, the best beggar in the Sydney CBD. He's refined his art. He's able to communicate in a particular way. He doesn't push at all. He'll say something like, "Do you have $10?" And when people pass by and they say nothing, he just says, "Thank you very much. Have a nice day, madam," or "Sir," whatever. That's all. And most people will stop and think, and they'll walk back and give him $2 or $5. So he's probably hovering around $200 a day. The point of it is that to be the best beggar in Sydney is better than being the worst accountant in Sydney. So finding that thing that people excel at, it sounds like a cliche. Everybody talks about it, but it is true. Once you find it, the rest of your life will change.
All right, so we need to try different, things until
Yeah,
we
if
get
if
in there.
if we haven't discovered what we're good at yet, we keep trying. But if we've already got something we're good at, then we nail that.
Great. Um, Thank you, Mo. Well, thinking in different areas, because with you it's very interesting because you have been working with your own company. Well, you just said that you closed two of them due to
Yes.
the pandemic. What would be, for example, I'm sure you have got many lessons from it, but what would be one that you would like to share from over 20 years of your
Hmm.
experience?
I think to have a safety net of what's important in your life as a person, because a lot of bad things happen during the journey of business, right? So you'll make a lot of money and you'll lose a lot of money, and you'll make a lot of friends and lose a lot of friends, as we were talking before. So the safety net is there must be something, right? And that thing could be that you go back to a loving family, right? And you think, okay, well, that's my bottom line. My bottom line is if I lose everything, I'll still be able to possibly drive a taxi and maybe make enough money that we can eat and drink and survive. But my family is there. That could be the bottom line. The bottom line could be something else. It could be, a value system, something you believe in, or even as superficial as just a hobby. Like your hobby is the thing that keeps you moving. So having something to anchor back to when business is rough is really important. That's what I've learned. And as a subset of that lesson, I've learned that you have to be able to accept that you're going to make millions of dollars and lose millions of dollars. So when I'm asked often about the definition of entrepreneur, I respond by saying, well, thank you for that question. It's taken me the best part of 25 years to learn the answer. But the answer is an entrepreneur is someone who goes to bed at night with, I don't know, $20 million of money in the bank account. And they wake up in the morning and they realize all of that money has gone. They've lost it all. But they can still shave, take a shower, comb their hair, put on a shirt, and go to the office. That's the entrepreneur. So the lesson that I've learned is you have to accept that, you may lose everything, but as long as you've learned, you keep moving.
You have to be tough for that. Well, maybe talking in, let's say, mental health as well. That must
Yes.
be really important. How CEOs or managing directors they cope with that.
I think those who cope well are those who've got that ability to release pressure. And for me, for example, it's something straightforward. Like I like cars, and if I feel really stressed, I just go and open up the bonnet and just look at the engine like this, or start up a car, or you sit in the car, or look at a car. Um, Maybe gardening, things like this. But the point of it about mental health is mental health, we're all like a balloon, and stress balloons us. And the way to, fix that is to have a release. And that release could be hobby, it could be travel, it could be just doing nothing, just literally just sleeping. So the best CEOs in the world have that ability to release. And the fallback position, that sort of the safety net of family or friends or loved ones, whatever, That's the second thing. So you've got those two items. They work collaboratively to reduce the stress level and improve mental health.
Great.
Mm.
Uh, Mo, if I may ask, what has been most, let's say, your motivation? Because I believe that often entrepreneurs, they have some source of like huge source of energy and motivation
Yes.
to cope with that. What have been that for you in your case?
Um, I think for me, it was a trigger event, but I'll spare you the details. So the short answer first, that the motivation for me was to be able to succeed so that I can help other people within my immediate circle, family members, relatives, friends, etc. But it wasn't because I wanted to help them originally. I wasn't, I'm not a natural helper, But the trigger event, which is the longer answer, is I used to rent, in shared accommodation. And one day the landlord, I was ironing my shirt going to an interview, right? So it was my iron and it was his ironing board, right? But it was a furnished accommodation, right? And it was reasonable rent that we were all paying, and there were about 10 of us in the house. And so I was ironing my shirt in the living room, and he came in and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm ironing my shirt." He said, "Why are you ironing your shirt in the living room?" I said, "Because there's nowhere else. It's like the laundry's small and the bedrooms are small, and it's only one shirt. It'll take me like 1 minute. That's literally it." And he said, "Not in my house. In my house, you don't iron your shirt in the living room. You iron it, go out in the balcony or do something like this." And he unplugged the iron. And so I took the thing outside, but I promised myself in that balcony that that would be the beginning of when I would not need to put up with this for too long. And that changed things, and it triggered a few things. And so that was the triggering event. But the bigger picture is, Sergio, we all want to help in some fashion, but the ability to help comes from being stable ourselves. If I'm not strong enough to lift myself, how can I lift someone else? And so that, for me anyway, that's a motivator. And I note that a lot of CEOs that I know, or business owners, they have the same style of motivation.
Thanks for your honesty in that answer. Yeah, it can be any experience, but that makes a mental picture. It does, yeah, it doesn't take like a huge something really impactful, but something like that can exactly trigger you. What do you think about this concept? There is a concept, if I'm right, the name is something like the moving line, the moving final line. So it's like, for example, when entrepreneurs, they want to achieve so much success and I don't know, contracts, etc. And once they are getting there, it's like if the final line is one step ahead, one step ahead. What do you
Yes.
think about that concept?
I think it's a natural phenomenon. And I think most entrepreneurs would be less than honest if they said to you, "I don't have that moving line." It's a phenomenon because of human nature. So, if they say to themselves, "I know what, I am going to stop working hard as soon as I reach $5 million."
Mhm.
And then they reach it and think, as you say correctly, well, I mean, it's a shame to stop now. I've got so much potential. Let me see if I can get 7. So the moving line keeps moving. I don't have a solution for it, by the way. Like, if I had a solution, I'd patent the solution. There isn't a solution for it other than, those two pressure points, the release points I mentioned, family and hobbies or things like that. If you take the bigger picture, you sort of take a helicopter view and think, all right, well, the final line has to have a reason for it. It's the final line because beyond that line, I will start spending more time with my family, or beyond it, I'm going to give away more to charity or whatever. Having that external view doesn't eliminate the moving line. It just reduces its impact or shortens the time that it keeps moving. That's all.
All right, thank you, Mo. So, well, we are getting to the near the end of this meeting. Just a few final questions.
Of
So
course.
let's say two. One will be to close. What will be the name of this show? I like to call it Today's Lesson because every day is a beautiful day to learn. Um,
Yes.
what will be, if you can resume it, like some of those lessons maybe in your personal life as well as in business and maybe also in coaching, teaching, training? Yeah, we could finish up with those three and that would be great.
As in the name of the show, you mean?
No, no, sorry. Uh, if you can think of, let's say, one of those main lessons that you have got, and in each of those three areas. So, for example, maybe at a personal level in your personal life, in the
Yes.
business side, and coaching, training side.
Sure, sure. So at the personal level, being loyalty to the people and the things who were with you when you were small, being loyal to them when you become big, so to speak, that's very important. The second thing in terms of business is the acceptance, the fact that competition is not about destroying the other party, even when you can destroy them, but it's about sort of like having the human element of competition so that even competitors respect one another and there's almost like a code between competitors. I think that's a lesson that I've learned. And the third one at the coaching and training level is every human being who you meet has a story. And the more annoying the people who you meet, the more your challenge should be, I'm going to find that gold, that sort of thing that's shining underneath. And my job is to not be annoyed, but to sort of really understand who is this person who's in front of me that everybody else says is annoying. I'm going to find out who they are. So, from a coaching and training point of view, that's also important.
Great. And the final question is, um, what would you like what would you like your impact to be in this world, if I can say it in that way?
My impact would be perhaps if I would like the impact to be that maybe I've been able to save a few businesses and then the owners who put their money into them survive and their families continue to flourish. If I can do that, that's enough for me.
Great. Thank you very much, Mo. And I'm sure in all of your students and people around you, we are all able to learn
Thank you,
from you as
Sergio.
well.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for having me on your wonderful show.